Hi friends, welcome to devopsstack channel. In this video, I am going to explain you Terraform providers. You will get in-depth knowledge on Terraform providers. In the previous videos, I have covered Terraform and its functionalities in 5 minutes, and I also shown you Terraform installation in Linux and Windows environment as well. In this video, I will explain you what is Terraform providers and provider versioning, and how to define multiple providers in single configuration file, and I will show you different types of providers. As I said earlier, Terraform supports almost all the cloud providers like AWS, Google Cloud Platform, Azure, OpenStack, VMware, IBM, and many more. Not only cloud providers, it also support on-premises as well. Here, a provider will be responsible for understanding API interactions, and also it will expose their resources. For example, I just want to create one AWS infrastructure. So for that, I have to choose provider as a AWS. Below is the syntax for defining the provider in Terraform configuration file. Here, along with the provider name, you have to define the authentication details as well. In our case, we are using the provider AWS. So AWS requires access key and secret key. By using this access key and secret key, Terraform will interact with the AWS provider. Depending upon the provider that you choose, authentication details will be different. Like, it may have username and password, it may have secret key and access key, it may have token. For example, if you choose AWS provider, the Terraform will expect from you access key and secret access key. If you choose Bitbucket as a provider, it will ask you username and password. If you choose digital version, it expects token. After adding the Terraform provider, it is need to run Terraform command, that is called Terraform init. Terraform init command will download required plugins and it will initialize the providers. During the Terraform init, if the version argument is not specified, the most recent provider will be downloaded. It is recommended to provide the version number in the prod environment to stick with the particular version. If you want any specific version, you have to mention that version number in the provider block. Here I have mentioned version equal to 2.8. Based on that, Terraform will download 2.8 version. You can use the below arguments as well. For example, if you want greater than equal to the version, you have to mention greater than equal to that particular version number. If you want less than equal to the version, you have to mention less than equal to 1.0. If any version in the particular version range, you have to mention tilde greater than that particular version number. If any version between your version number, you have to define less than equal to 2.10 comma greater than equal to 2.30. In the practical session, we will see all of them in detail. You can define multiple provider blocks of different vendors in Terraform configuration file. If you observe the sample code, I have mentioned provider AWS and also I have mentioned provider Bitbucket. So each resource by default have a provider name as prefix. If you observe here from the AWS block, resource AWS underscore VPC. So the Terraform will understand these resources comes under the provider called AWS. If you observe the Bitbucket resources, that resources as a prefix called Bitbucket underscore repository. So the Terraform will understand that resource comes under the Bitbucket provider. Based upon the prefix, the Terraform will automatically pick up the right provider. There may be a situation comes like this. For example, if you need to use different configurations of the same provider, you need to specify the alias in the provider plugs. So if you observe here, I have provided the alias name as West. So if you want to use specific provider with alias, you need to specify alias name in the resource plug. I will show you clearly in the practical session how to use this alias name. So coming to the provider types, Terraform supports two different types of providers. One is HashiCorp supported providers like AWS, Google Cloud Platform, IBM, all this. So second one is third party providers. Terraform supported providers can be downloaded automatically during Terraform init. For example, in our case, we have chosen infrastructure provider as a AWS. If you mention provider as a AWS, whenever you run the Terraform init, the Terraform will automatically download that provider. So no need to do anything. Coming to third party providers, you have to define the plugins manually. So the Terraform will not download at the time of Terraform init if you are using the third party providers. So if you observe here why these third party providers are required, in some cases organizations might have their proprietary platforms for which they want to use Terraform. At that time you will use these third party providers. Terraform init cannot automatically download these type of providers that are not distributed by the HashiCorp. You must define the providers in the plugins directory of the user home directory. So I will show you how to define these third party providers in detail in our practical session. As I said, based upon the operating systems, that plugin directory location will be changed. For suppose if you are using the Windows version, you have to define that plugins under the app data terraform.d plugins. So if you are using any other operating system, you have to define that plugins in the home directory. First of all, go to the Terraform Providers website. So here I am choosing AWS as a provider. Click on that AWS. Once you click on that AWS, so in this documentation they will define how to use that provider. I'm copying that snippet. So if you observe here, I have mentioned provider as a AWS and I have provided region. Here I am using the access key and secret key. Why? Because AWS requires the access key and secret key. Based on the access key and secret key, the Terraform will interact with the AWS provider and it will give the resources. So once you define the provider, you have to run the command called terraform init. As we discussed earlier, this AWS supported by the HashiCorp, right? So the Terraform will download that provider automatically. You don't need to do anything. If you observe here, the Terraform going to download 2.69 version of the provider. So you are not defined any version. Because of the reason, Terraform downloaded latest version of the AWS provider 2.69. If you observe here, the Terraform created the folder called .terraform. Under that, the plugin will be available. Instead of using the latest version, so if you want to any specific version, you have to define that version number under the provider. So I have mentioned version equal to 2.39 and I have run the terraform init command. It was downloaded 2.39 plugin. Okay, likewise you have to define the version. So for example, if you need less than equal to 2.39 or greater than equal to 2.39 and similar to or equal to 2.39, you have to define like that. Based on your requirement, you can define it. Now let me show you how to define the same providers in the same configuration file. Here if you see, I have provided AWS provider. One is called US East 1. I have defined. Another region is US West 1, right? So if you want to use same provider, you have to define the alias name. So I have defined alias equal to West. Based on this alias name, I can refer the under resources. Okay, so here I just want to create two EC2 instances based upon the different AMIs. Okay, one is for US East 1 and one is for US West 1. So I have defined AWS resources, given it name as instance 1 and instance 2, and defined AMIs for the both resources. Once you define your resources, you have to run the Terraform init. So here the Terraform plugin already downloaded. Next, run the Terraform validate command. What it will do exactly is, so it will validate your code. If any mistakes in your code, it will display what are those. So in our case, I think we don't have any mistakes. So see, yes, we don't have any mistakes in our code. It's code success. So if you observe here, I have mentioned provider equal to AWS West. So based on the alias name, you can refer that alias name under this resource. Okay, let's run Terraform plan. That what Terraform plan will do is, it will give you the blueprint. That means it will give you the plan what you are executing. So once you confirm with, after that you will run the Terraform apply command. So if you observe here, it's showing it will going to create two resources. So all are fine, right? So it's going to create instance 1, instance 2. So once you okay with that plan, you have to run the command called Terraform apply. Okay, so here I am giving the auto approve, so no need to give the yes or something. So it will automatically create your resources. Okay, if you observe here, it is going to create instance 1 and instance 2. So let's wait for some time. Now the Terraform apply is completed. It has created two resources. If you want to see those two resources, you have to log into your AWS management console and you have to refresh. I am under North Virginia, US East 1. If you observe here, there is one resource is created. Let me go to US West 1, North California. Here also one resource is created. Once you're done with your practical, you have to destroy your infrastructure by using the command terraform destroy. I am providing the auto approve as well. So once you run this command, whatever the resources created till now, that will automatically deleted. So in our case, US East 1 and US West 1, there are two instances are created. So once you run the terraform destroy, it will automatically delete those two resources. You observe the terraform is going to destroy. So here let me refresh it. That instance was terminated. Let me go to US East 1. Also the instance was terminated. Okay, let me go to show you how to use the Terraform community providers. So for that you have to go to the community providers. So here, if you observe here, the provider listed below have been built by the community of Terraform users and vendors. These providers are not tested nor officially maintained by the HashiCorp. So for the reason, we have to define the plugins manually. Okay, let me take Git as a community provider. For that, click on that Git. So it will go to the GitHub repository of Git. If you want to use Git as a provider, you have to copy that code under provider.tf. I have copied. So let me run Terraform init. If you clearly observe the Terraform saying it is not supported by the HashiCorp. So you have to mention that plugin under terraform.t. So we will see how to define that one. Let's go to the GitHub of the Git provider. So here find the plugins. So if I click the GitHub, see there are plugins available. If you observe here, there are based upon the operating systems plugins are available. In my case, I am using the Windows 64 operating system. That's what I am downloading that one. I already downloaded that Windows AMD 64. Let me do one thing. Let me copy that one. Now go to the GitHub page, and if you observe there, they are clearly mentioning you have to mention that plugin under the .terraform.d folder. So for that, click on Windows R button, go to that location. So here I am creating the plugin directory and copying that plugin. Let me go to the visual editor. So here I am trying to run Terraform init. I'm getting some error. Let me see what it is exactly. Yeah, I find it. So I have created a plugin directory, but you have to provide the plugins. Okay, so I have changed that name. Let me run Terraform init command. So see, the Terraform has been successfully initialized. Now you can use the Git provider along with the resources. I hope you have understand what is Terraform providers and provider types, provider versioning, and how to define multiple providers in
single configuration file.